Welcome to Finance Dojo. We aim to be the best personal finance educational channel you'll ever need. Click that subscribe button and the notification bell right now so you won't miss out. So evidently, a lot can change quickly because CNBC posted a video titled, "Why is the US dollar so powerful?" in April 2020. Only to post a follow-up 2 years later titled, "Why the US currency may be in danger." CNN, The Wall Street Journal, ABC, and Investopedia all mirror this sentiment, raising the question, is the US dollar in danger? And if so, what can we do to prevent it? On the surface, the national debt in the United States has reached $30 trillion. The yearly deficit continues to climb, and the popularity of the dollar has declined for more than 2 decades. Let's talk about how a declining dollar might affect you, the economy, and whether this is a huge concern, since I like breaking headlines like this down and finding unbiased facts. It's alarming because they have a valid argument. Because it's a reserve currency, which means it is accepted internationally. The US dollar has been the most powerful currency in the world for the past 80 years. Because of its durability, lack of volatility, and safety, the US dollar has retained its position since 1945. When dozens of countries exchange products and services with one another, it helps to have a single universal currency that is accepted everywhere and has a consistent value. Otherwise, you risk being paid in a currency that is difficult to swap, and by the time you can convert it back to your home currency, the value of your home currency may have tanked. Consider it a worldwide transfer of wealth via the US dollar, which is widely accepted as safe. Except for the US dollar, it's similar to utilizing a stable coin to shift money from one token to another without the price falling. The United States profits from this because its currency is in more demand across the world, and more countries hold dollars, giving us greater purchasing power. However, according to CNBC, the dollar's worth may be in jeopardy. Therefore, we need to look into it and figure out why. First, they claim that the US dollar's greatest threat is the growing deficit. The United States is similar to a corporation in that it takes money from taxpayers and exports it, then invests it in systems that keep it expanding. In more concrete terms, the federal government received $4 trillion in income and spent $6.8 trillion in 2021. Yes, the federal government has been in a deficit for the past 20 years, which means it spends more than it earns. It's no surprise that the US has spent more than it earns, resulting in a national debt of more than $30 trillion. The national debt has been steadily rising since the late 1800s, but a large government deficit leads to extra money creation, which promotes inflation and devalues the existing currency in circulation, according to CNBC. Another issue raised by economist Stephen Roach is that the United States has a very low savings rate, which means that in times of economic hardship, we must borrow money from foreign countries who lend us their savings to get us through until something happens that makes them reconsider giving us money. A weakening dollar is the second effect of a declining currency. Even while theoretically a dollar is always a dollar, it is not valued at that amount. Instead, 3 distinct indicators are used to track this money. The first is the foreign currency exchange rate. The second is the demand for 10-year Treasury notes. Finally, there are foreign money reserves. This is a clever way of describing how many of these dollars are held by countries other than the United States. It's no surprise that the dollar now is worth substantially less than it was in the 1950s, when people think of a declining currency. We already have a currency that depreciates as more is issued, but a falling dollar is much more relevant in this context since it affects you and global demand in terms of how much it can purchase. First, when it comes to foreign exchange values, the dollar has recently gained as investors seek a haven amid global uncertainties. Second, demand for Treasury notes is effectively a 10-year debt to the US government. These are purchased by those who desire a safe location to deposit their money and a consistent return on their investment. The dollar, on the other hand, has been growing in lockstep with interest rates, which means that when rates rise, so does interest in higher yielding bonds, which helps strengthen the currency. Third, foreign currency reserves are less optimistic due to the steady decline of the dollar as other currencies take their place. According to CNBC, we've reached the lowest point in 25 years. On the other side, a weakened currency may benefit the US economy by making our exports less expensive to purchase, thereby increasing demand. Imported items would be more expensive because their currency would buy less and inflation would be greater since the same things would cost more. Third, no reserve currency position has ever lasted more than 80 to 120 years, causing concern that the US dollar may not exist indefinitely. From 1720 through 1815, France, for example, was the reserve currency. They eventually ran a deficit and spent more money than they earned, forcing interest rates to be lowered and even more, currency to be reissued to keep up with the demand. It was a great boom for the economy at first, but it depreciated their money over time, and the world's lost trust in France's reserve currency within 10 years, switching to the British pound, which was the reserve currency from 1815 to 1920. During the period when France's economy was in decline, Britain's economy grew to become one of the world's largest. London was the epicenter of international trade, and its money was accepted around the globe. Following World War I, the United Kingdom experienced an economic downturn with sluggish development and deflation. In 1944, they abandoned the gold standard and became the United States reserve currency. Before that, in 1920, the United States overtook the United Kingdom as the world's largest economy when other countries abandoned the gold standard to fund World War I. By the end of World War II, the United States was able to send weapons and products to other countries in exchange for gold. Other countries would buy US treasuries as a safe store of wealth instead of gold. Is our danger money, or is this a fear-mongering headline? With mounting national debt, soaring inflation, and diminishing global dollar reserves. The national debt, which currently amounts to just over $30 trillion, is the ideal time to bring it up. That's enough to pay off everyone's home, all outstanding student loan obligations, and vehicle loans, as well as hand out a $25,000 check to everyone in the United States. So, $30 trillion. Is there anything to be concerned about? And might this result in the currency collapsing? Unlike an individual who should only spend money from their bank account, a country frequently funds its activities to maintain its growth. It's the same as someone taking out a student loan with the knowledge that if they spend $10,000 now, they may earn $50,000 or more in the future. Only in the United States, they can keep borrowing, sometimes for absolutely useless things. Is that an issue? When we look at our debt in terms of how much money we make, we're better than a lot of other nations because the amount of debt we're taking on is still little in comparison to what we possess as a country. There's no motivation to pay off the national debt early, if at all. If individuals stop investing in the United States and we cease expanding, the United States will have to pay a higher interest rate on its debt to entice additional investors, resulting in future problems. Experts suggest that while the dollar's future is uncertain, there is no risk because no one else can take its place. Because 80% of all US dollars have been created in the previous 22 months and 64% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. China's economy is on track to overtake the United States by 2030. If there is to be a new reserve currency, a lot must happen first. And without a big black swan event that weakens the United States' position in global commerce, it may not happen at all, or not at a time we can anticipate. According to economists, the US dollar is utilized in 40% of worldwide commerce and 80% of cross-border transactions, demonstrating that it is a decent flight to safety in times of economic uncertainty. So as much as credit I'd want to give for this, and as much as I believe it has some value over the next 100 years, I wouldn't be concerned about the dollar's destruction in the short term. If it were to collapse or lose a large amount of value, it would have ramifications for every country with US dollar reserves. As always, this video is for educational purposes only and not financial advice. You should always do your own research and speak to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.